Hey, what's going on, everyone? So, a little bit late today as usual. All right, let me just get everything set up here. Okay. It's Saturday, so as you guys know, my ritual on Saturday is to have like a Dr. Brew. It's a probiotic. Again, I don't get any kickbacks. I just like this company quite a bit. So you're welcome to check it out. I personally buy it at natural grocers and also at Whole Foods. But I'm pretty sure it's available like at any other kind of like higher organic type store. Bob, what is going on? Lupilo. Let me know if I pronounced that correctly. Names are kind of tough for me all the time. But good to see you guys. Let me know what you're up to this weekend. I'll just wait a little bit to cover the topic today. We'll be covering kind of the 4 doctors you'll ever need. George, what is going on? Good to see you on this live. For everyone that just jumped in, if you're interested in trying a new drink, I'm getting literally no kickbacks from this Dr. Brew. It's a really good probiotic. They have a few different flavors. I like this one quite a bit. It's called Love. They have like a few other flavors. They're all pretty good too. So, okay. So you guys remember, if you have any questions at all, just let me know and I'll be happy to answer them, of course. But today we'll be talking about like a phrase I got from Paul Chek, and it's pretty common sense approach to health and wellness that has been unfortunately lost in today's culture of trying to overcomplicate something so simple. So we'll be talking about the 4 doctors you'll ever need, and there's a lot of truth to this. So before you try anything, if you're on like a fitness journey or you want to improve your like mental or physical health or want to work on your aesthetics at all, I would thoroughly look over these 4 topics we're going to look over, because oftentimes, like literally 99.9% of the time, it's really all you have to master for what the average person is looking for. I'm not saying just by mastering these things you're going to be like the next Olympian or anything of that sort, but for the average person that's looking just to kind of look good and feel good and not live a life full of like stress and anxiety and depression and stuff of that sort, just an honest approach to these 4 variables is honestly, in the bulk majority of cases, almost every case actually, all you need to do. And honestly mastering these variables as well, not just kind of intellectually understanding them, which a lot of healthcare professionals themselves do, but then they don't apply any of this stuff. And when you actually apply it, that's the only time you get any of the benefit, not just from understanding the concepts. So before you try like fasting and this and that and any other kind of complicated marketable or very catchy health approach, I would just first, or anything regarding biohacking, I just would first really focus on just thoroughly and generally mastering these topics and then kind of building off of that. And you'll notice once you do actually master these concepts, you'll quickly figure out you actually don't need to do pretty much anything else for the most part, okay? So so we'll begin, and of course this is kind of like my perspective, and like I mentioned, there are no absolutes, and I obviously never met any of you guys, so I don't know your specific situation. And it's really tough to give health advice without knowing that person's particular situation and goals and their starting place, etc., and stuff of that sort. But on another, from another vantage point, it's also important to remember that we all have a human body, like a biological body that has certain determined rules that you have to follow. And if you don't follow those rules, you become overweight. You need antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds. You need like a myriad of other medical drugs just to get through life. And of course, this is super common in today's culture, especially in America, no doubt about it. But remember, just because it's very common doesn't mean it's normal. And it's not normal to have to be on a myriad of different medical drugs and have like a huge belly or be overweight and stuff of that sort. It's not normal. It's actually like signs of pathology and your body desperately trying to tell you that things need to change and become more sustainable and kind of basically for you to live like a human being again, because you're kind of out of alignment. And that's why all of these symptoms are occurring. Those symptoms, like whenever I see a happy, healthy person, I don't see them taking any medical drugs, personally, and stuff of that sort. So why not just focus on how to become happy, healthy, how to take care of your body which is kind of your vehicle to experience this world, and then just go from there. So that's my take. So let's start off 4 doctors you'll ever need. Let's start off with just some super basic stuff. And I know a lot of people on this live are going to be listening to this stuff and they're like, I get it. I heard this before. I know you get it. And I know you probably heard it a million times, but I almost guarantee you're actually not doing it, or not doing it consistently and with the appropriate amount of application to gain any of the benefits, because 9 out of 10 Americans right now are metabolically sick. Like anywhere you walk outside of the US, easily 90% of people you'll see are like overweight or on some type of medical drug, or just they have this miserable look in their face. So clearly something's not right and something's not working. And since that's 90%, the chances of that actually also being you is quite high, okay? And it's tough for people to see that it's not normal, and it's tough for them to create change because they perceive it as normal because it's so common. But again, it's so important to remember that just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal, doesn't mean it's healthy at all, which it's not. And it's honestly like just a sign of a lot of mental and physical pathology in a person's life. And until they come to the complete resolution of that is the case and that is no longer acceptable to them, change will never happen. And I can kind of tell you guys 1,000,005 things to do, and nothing will ever happen. And things will just become worse year after year. And you can kind of look at all of the nutritional research right now we have, and all of the medical drugs out there, and all of the fasting diets, and all of the random diets and gimmicky exercise programs and stuff of that sort we have on the market today. And the US is actually the sickest humans in the history of the entire human race, not just on the planet currently, just in the entire human race, stuff of that sort. So you have to look way back in time. Humans in general have been around for a few million years, but there have been 28 plus different types of human species that have come and gone. Oftentimes people think like just the Homo sapien has been the only human on the planet, but in reality we're just like 1 out of 28 or 30, and there are new species being discovered every decade or so. I haven't been keeping up with that exactly. Last time I checked, there are 28 plus. And there's a good book on that called The Last Ape Standing, I believe by, I forgot the name of the author, but it's basically the back of a head of an ape. It's a really fun and interesting read, and it takes you through how these 28 human species have come and gone, and how most of these human species have gone extinct over time, and we're the last human species on the planet, the Homo sapien, and we've only been around for like 200,000 years. So not even that long in the grand scheme of the entire planet, which has been around for like 4.5 billion years. And then although these numbers change as research improves, obviously, and our ability to measure space improves, but the general consensus is the universe is around 14 billion years old currently, and there's a belief that other universes existed even before our universe. So who knows how old the entire, existence of anything is. Maybe trillions of years old, or maybe it doesn't even exist in space and time at all, which is an interesting thought to consider. So out of what I'm saying is, out of all of that time span, out of all of those human species, we're the most like medically advanced and have the most nutritional science and have the most hospitals and have the most access to hospitals as well, and access to nutritional and workout information and lifestyle information via the internet. Anyone has access to these almost at this point. And yet Americans are the sickest humans in the history of the entire of the entire, I would say, just planet altogether, okay? The sickest living organism altogether. So clearly, more information isn't going to do the trick. Another body boot camp class, another whatever, isn't going to all of a sudden get people to change. The only thing that will change is once people stop accepting normalized pathology, basically, as just normal and everyday living. So in my opinion, normalized pathology would be like, hey, you needing to take like a bunch of medical drugs just to get up in the morning, even one medical drug, or being overweight, Looking back before 1950, there were almost no obese people in the US in particular. And looking back even to our hunter-gatherer era, just 10,000 years ago, there's literally no obese people, period, altogether. So there's clearly not a genetic variable. It's moreover an environmental variable and how those genes interact with that environment. And in particular, the normalization of pathology in modern culture, such as Western culture in particular, but in particular the US and also like Australia is quite bad as well. So again, everything I'm going to say here, it literally means absolutely nothing if a person is still in the mindset of just accepting that as normal. Okay? So, but if you're not, here's some things to consider to begin your journey. And you'll notice that if you honestly master these 4 things, it'll actually be enough to finish your journey as well. And under rare circumstances will you ever need to do anything more than genuinely master these 4 things. So the first thing is sleep. And I know a lot of people say, yeah, I get it. I get sleep and I'm doing it, but I almost guarantee like almost nobody actually is. So let's define what good sleep hygiene is first. So we have that as a base and then kind of progress off of that, okay? So good sleep hygiene, generally speaking, is sleeping between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So roughly speaking, remember your body repairs itself physically from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and mentally from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. And that's presuming you're getting good, deep quality REM sleep as well in that time interval also. And most people would say, oh yeah, I don't sleep around those hours, and stuff of that sort. And some people, they would say like, oh yeah, I roughly sleep around those hours. So let's cover that subject, okay? So they go, okay, so I sleep around those hours. All right, cool. My next question to them would be like, let's start a sleeping log, some kind of sleeping journal. And you'll see quickly once you start looking at the details of their sleeping log, some days they're going to sleep at midnight. Some days they're going to sleep at 10 p.m., let's just say. And then some days at, let's say on the weekend, 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or something of that sort. And let's say hypothetically, even under the best situation, they're in bed at 10 p.m. every day, 7 days a week. But they're on their phone like 30 to 60 minutes. And then they're actually asleep at like 11 p.m. Let's presume they fall asleep instantly and don't have like psychologically induced chronic insomnia, which most people do in the Western culture because most people are just running on adrenaline 24/7, being bombarded by like too much work, working too much in front of the computer, financial burdens, overtaxation of the central nervous system by needing to do having too much stimulation as well. I mean, just look like maybe 100 to 150 years ago. I think 150 years ago would be more appropriate. The amount of information consumed by the average person in a lifetime is equivalent to the amount of information consumed by a typical individual today in a single day. So just to give you an idea of how much stimulus there is on the human central nervous system, which hasn't quite evolved very well of dealing with all these chronic stimuli, in particular chronic low-grade chronic stress, such as having to drive on the freeway constantly, dealing with constant deadlines at work, annoying coworkers at work, financial burdens maybe, also health issues as well, gut issues, low back pain, being overweight causes a lot of chronic inflammation in the body as well. Stuff of this sort, some medications and vaccines can cause a lot of inflammation in the body also, and a myriad of other things, maybe living next to some kind of very polluted area like a freeway. If your body constantly has to fight something off, like even an injury, for example, that's going to create an inflammatory response. Then there's also the mental aspect of inflammation as well. Deadline after deadline at work, like I mentioned, financial instability, having the personality of constantly having to be on the go, maybe even a harsh internal critic that leads to a lot of fight or flight response in the central nervous system that can cause inflammation. So there are a myriad of things that are leading to the central nervous system being overly burdened, and then that's obviously going to decrease how well your immune system functions, and how well you recover from workouts and recover from work and how your energy levels are doing, etc., etc. So going back to the sleeping example here, let's just say the person said, okay, like I am falling asleep at 10, I'm in bed by 10, but I fall asleep at 11. I'm like, okay, well, that's 7 hours of physical repair time lost every single week. And you may be able to get away with that when you're like in your early 20s, for example, but when you're in your 30s, 40s, and plus, that's going to really have a huge draining effect on your energy and your ability to recover from workouts, presuming you are working out. And most people, 9 out of 10 people, don't even work out at all, like 0 times a week, moreover, even 1 time a week. And the few people that do work out most of the times aren't even working out correctly for their body type and their goals, and thus that leads them to a lot of injuries and stuff of that sort. And so right there, like that schedule looks pretty perfect, but this person is losing already 7 hours of physical repair time every week. So I would suggest to this person, like, hey, let's try to get to sleep at like 9:30 p.m., set up a good bedtime ritual of a consistent bedtime ritual, which is very important as well. So let's say you take a shower, nice and hot shower, for example, and then you get to bed 30 minutes before you even need to be asleep, and then maybe do something like listen to an audiobook if you don't want to be very active with your mind, or read a book or something like that, or listen to a podcast or stuff of this sort. Just something to actually close your eyes and allow your central nervous system to down regulate during the day. I feel also, in the grand scheme of things, doing midday naps helps a lot as well. Just like 20 minutes or so. I try to do a nap after every single one of my workouts. So I work out 5 days a week, and just right afterwards have a meal, take a shower, and then take a 20-minute nap, 30-minute nap sometimes if I need it, and then begin my day. Stuff of that sort. All these little things make a huge, huge difference in terms of how you feel, how you look as well, and how healthy your body's going to be. All these things, but you have to genuinely master them. So when I say sleep between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., that really means you're honestly actually going to sleep. You're already sleeping at 10 p.m. and you're waking up at, say, like 6:30 or whatever, every day, 7 days a week. And how many people are doing that? Like almost nobody is doing that. Even in the healthcare professions, I see a lot of people. Like, how many times have you guys heard your doctor say, hey, work less and sleep more, but you can clearly see they're overworked and not sleeping well. It's like even the leaders can't even do it correctly. And no wonder all the followers are falling behind, because leadership sets the tone, right? And if leadership is, most medical doctors, die earlier than the average life expectancy. The average life expectancy in the US is 76 or so. And most doctors actually die before then and stuff of that sort. And then not just targeting the medical profession, even in the fitness and health profession, there are a lot of just endless amounts of steroid users and pill poppers and needle injectors and all these guys or girls, whatever they want to identify as, masquerading as health professionals, but overburdening their body and just doing it in an unsustainable way. That's probably also not communicating a good message to our youth. So sleep, once again, I get it. You understand. It's easy to understand. Like a 2-year-old child can understand these concepts, but who's actually doing this? That is the main thing, because that is where all the benefit comes from. So keep that in mind. Like, you need to actually do this and have a predictable system in place to allow you to do this consistently, because consistency is key, especially with health and wellness, because the human body and mind deteriorate quite quickly if not attended to. So if you don't have systems in place that help you be extremely consistent with all these things, you're not going to really gain any of the benefit probably from it, okay? Especially with things like muscle gain, for example, that requires high maintenance and very consistent systems. Keeping a lean physique, it's the same exact thing. Managing depression, anxiety, and other emotional issues is also an active participation that requires consistent participation and stuff of that sort, especially in a society that doesn't value mental or physical health. And I know on paper people say, like, yeah, it's so important, this and that, but then when you look at their actions, it's not important at all. Or 9 out of 10 Americans right now wouldn't be metabolically sick, which they are. That's clearly their actions showing that it's not important to them. And in America, it's very interesting, because the people have been, unfortunately, sold an idea that what's not important is important, and what is important, which is their mental and physical health, is not important. And my question for you then is, like, what are you going to accomplish in your life, or what kind of quality of life are you going to have if you're just chronically very overweight, or you have low back pain, or you have depression, or you need to take 13 different medical drugs, each of which have side effects, just to get up and have enough energy to get to work in the morning? Like, what kind of quality of life is that? Like, what's the point then? I mean, that's my question that I would ask myself if I was in that situation. Like, what is the point that I need to go on this unsustainable path of medical drug use and being overweight, and then kind of making up lies and belief systems to kind of justify that behavior and keep the ball rolling, right? So the next, out of the four doctors you'll ever need, the next one is going to be, Hal Palachuk would say, doctor diet, right? And this is going to be like a main pillar of your health success in terms of what you eat. Because if you think about it, everything you are is made out of food. Like, let's just look back, way back to your mom and dad. Your dad's sperm required food to form. Your mom's egg required food to form as well. They needed to eat that food and need to be converted and metabolized into their body, and then eventually form eggs and sperm, etc., etc. And then when you're being conceived, that required food. And then when you're born, it required food to sustain your entire living up until today. So everything you are is basically made up of food. So obviously what you eat and what you choose to eat is going to have a huge impact on how you look, how you feel, how you think, etc., etc., on your mental and physical health. Because remember, of course, depends on a few people, who you ask. There's some theories about who forms consciousness. Does consciousness form the body, or does the body form the consciousness, etc., etc.? But the general idea, just for the sake of this conversation, is the body gives rise to the central nervous system gives rise to the mind gives rise to consciousness, right? And so if you have a sick body, you're going to have a sick mind. And then on top of that, whenever you're dealing with any health issues or any injuries or stuff of that sort, or depression, it fixates your attention as well. So when you're depressed, you see everything from a depression lens. When your low back hurts, let's say quite a bit, that's all you can focus on. Or when you have the flu, that's all you can focus on is just your health issue. It fixates your attention and limits your experience of life by a lot. And you can't ever achieve a higher state of being if you're still physically sick. That is the absolute basic requirement to achieve a physically healthy body, to achieve higher states of consciousness and stuff of that sort. So it's important from that vantage point as well. And diet is going to be a huge, huge part. So my question for you to ask for yourself is, if you're like overweight and need a lot of medical drugs and stuff of that sort, there's something wrong definitely in your diet. In fact, all of the four doctors we'll talk about here, but there's something definitely wrong in your diet. And just honestly ask yourself, like, hey, maybe I don't know what to eat, or stuff of that sort. And it's okay. You can't know everything. And it's confusing today with all the labels too and stuff of that sort. And unfortunately, all of the internet gurus, one guy saying this thing, another guy saying the other thing, etc., and stuff of that sort. But if you're having all of these symptoms, if you're very overweight, remember, you can't eat healthy and be like very overweight. It's hard to be overweight eating nothing but chicken, fish, vegetables, fruit, and water, or unsweetened tea or black coffee or stuff of that sort. Good luck. No way it's going to happen, okay? And most always, if a person is struggling with weight issues, they're eating far, far more than they think there are, and also far worse than they think they are. And most of their diet is probably composed of actual processed food. And it's just the reality. That's it. And they have to come to that realization that, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. And I either become my own mechanic by reading. I would recommend start reading like 2 or 3 books a month. Rather, taking courses on nutrition. Many of these courses are accessible online, and they're inexpensive overall in the grand scheme of things, because the average person that's overweight is already spending $8,000 to $16,000 a year on contributing to that excess weight gain and stuff of that sort. And these courses are way less than that, and they don't require you to have like a degree to apply. It's just like anyone can take these courses, and you don't even have to take the test at the end. You can if you like, But most of the time, just take the course for the information and then learn how to apply the information for your specific situation. But once again, a lot of people already know this stuff, but the reason they're not applying it is because they just don't want to change at the end of the day. And that's just the reality. They just don't want to change the person that led to all their issues. And that's why I said in the beginning, if you're not at that stage, all the stuff I'm talking about here will go in one ear and out the other. Like literally nothing in your life will change unless you decide like, hey, enough is enough and I'm done with normalizing pathology in my life. Like literally nothing will change. I've never seen it change and stuff of that sort. So taking into consideration, I've done so many lives here for you guys, just giving out like thousands of dollars of free nutrition information completely for free. And if at this point you don't have your answers, I don't know what to tell you, okay? Because I gave them all to you for free on top of that. So the next doctor is movement, using movement as medicine. So almost nobody works out anymore, right? And how you work out is it's going to be dependent on what you're trying to achieve, okay? So I like to train for like aesthetics and health. So obviously there's a lot of weight training in my schedule, but that might not be your goal, okay? So you have to figure out what you're trying to achieve specifically and then tailor your workout specifically to that and try to be like very specific. Let's say you want to climb mountains. Okay, then you need like a mountain climbing program. I used to climb mountains back in the day as well. So you need to do a decent amount of endurance training, in particular hiking with like various weights of backpacks, do a lot of core and hip training, make sure you're really taking care of your body so your joints are they have a lot of biological resilience as well, because when you're out there climbing the mountains, often the distance, you don't have any reception. Obviously, if you get injured, it's going to be really tough to get back to somewhere where you could get help as well. So that's something to consider. So, Jerry, what is going on? We're talking about the 4 doctors you'll ever need and how literally nobody in America is even mastering at that level. I mentioned how just genuinely mastering these 4 concepts is, for the most part, all the average person needs to do to have like a huge upgrade in their health and stuff of that sort. And so again, using movement as medicine, you guys, I know it's easy to understand. I know you understand it intellectually, but I guarantee you almost nobody is doing it consistently. Just to give you an idea, it's already, I think, mid-March, March 14th. And already 90% of people have given up on their New Year's resolution goals. Already like 95% of people have given up on their New Year's resolution goals already. So again, the stuff we're talking about today is super, super simple. But remember, it's not about what you could understand. It's about what you could actually apply consistently, okay? So the 3 variables we covered from here is sleep, diet, movement. The next variable is, I'll kind of divide this one into, I'll actually include a 5th variable. Let's talk about central nervous system management first. I think this is an important topic, especially for Western cultures, which tend to be on the go quite a bit and tend to work a lot more than they think they do. So the central nervous system has ideally, evolved to have peak stresses followed by valleys of nothing going on. So let's say you got a stressful deadline and you accomplish that deadline, and ideally then you would take a few weeks off of work completely and then resume work, and there's a peak stress, another deadline, et cetera, et cetera. But today, unfortunately, you have this deadline and then followed by a whole bunch of micro stresses, endless micro stresses, like I mentioned a lot of them earlier, but like driving on the freeway, dealing with bills, then usually at work, like one deadline finishes and literally like another one pops up. Especially the higher you go up in a company, typically the more micro stresses and fires you have to kind of deal with on a daily basis, like putting out fires. Got to deal with employees, their personalities, their issues they bring into the workplace, plus the deadlines, plus a lot of projects, they just don't go according to schedule too, and that could be stressful as well. That's just a normal process of project completion. But it's tough for the human central nervous system to be able to sustain that constant bombardment of micro and macro stresses. So people break down quite a bit. So it's important to understand how the central nervous system ideally has evolved and learn to tailor your environment to reflect that as well. That's important. That's really important because a lot of times, especially there are a lot of things to consider with this conversation too, but especially people that accomplish fat loss programs, but then they continue to stay in that unsustainable environment. It's going to be really tough for them to sustain that fat loss long term. There's a 90% failure rate with any fat loss programs and stuff of that sort. So in that situation, the ideal situation would be for them to get out of that environment, get into a more sustainable environment, and on top of that, over the years, dig a little bit deeper on what is in their personality that led them into that unsustainable environment to begin with, because they're most likely going to carry that character trait with them into the new environment. And as the saying goes, you can't run away from yourself, right? So you'll replicate those problems in the new environment as well. And I sometimes see this with type A retired people. So they work their whole entire career, 50, 60, 70-hour weeks, sometimes 80-hour weeks. Then they retire and they learn to replicate these crazy work schedules in their retirement as well, thus continuing to overburden their central nervous system and stuff of that sort. So, okay. And then another thing to consider, the last one for our conversation today is, and this one can expand on for quite a few hours, but the importance of just being very clear about your core values and what's important to you. And that's like very important. And oftentimes people have a tough time with this one, but an easy way to view these core values is most often you have to do stuff you don't like doing, but then be consciously aware that you don't like doing these things. And that will help you get closer to an understanding of what you do enjoy doing. So, next time that one job doesn't work out, instead of being angry at the job, really just kind of sit down and thank that job for showing you what you don't want in your future path, and kind of clarifying and getting closer to what you do want, stuff of that sort. So for me, like for example, my core values are definitely working for myself. I enjoy having autonomy in my projects. I'm in the process of almost finishing a third book, doing a research project as well at Michigan State University and stuff of that sort. I like working out 5 days a week and not feeling rushed during the workout. Being healthy, eating regeneratively raised food, stuff of this sort, sleeping quite a bit, okay? So you want to write down, but those are my core values. You want to write down your core values and then take a look at your week and see how close those core values reflect in your week. And if there's like a huge gap, or there's what's referred to as a story gap, meaning your core values look one way, but your week looks completely the other way, then that's going to cause maladaptive behavior over time. And the wider the gap, the more maladaptive behavior that you're going to have to form to continuing to tell that lie to yourself. And unfortunately, one trick that I would be very conscious of that a lot of people fall into is they oftentimes have this story gap, but then instead of learning how to be more clear about it and clarify and close that story gap and get their week to reflect their core values, they start developing belief systems and kind of lies, you can say, on why to continue down the wrong path for them. So like Walensky, one of my favorite authors, would say, change can't happen until we're at first honest about the lies we tell ourselves and stuff of that sort. So oftentimes, let's say with occupational work, people say like, they kind of reframe the negative to the positive. Oh, like I don't like working these hours, but, I get this pay or I get this bonus. Oh, I don't like this, but, and they kind of learn how to reframe it into the positive. And there's a time for positive psychology for sure, but in most cases, it's used just to keep people stuck in paths they don't want to be stuck in. And thus, they have to form maladaptive behavior. And then they gain health problems, they gain weight, and then they have to use all these medical drugs and foolishly take something like Ozempic instead of really diving into, the shadow side of why they gained all that weight, and that robs them of honest change and gets them further lost. And then they're more lost and then have to get more medical drugs and get even sicker over time and just look sickly over time and stuff of that sort. because it all goes back to not wanting to change the person that caused a lot of their own issues and stuff of that sort. So it's really that simple. And from my observation, if you just master these 4 or 5 variables, like we mentioned, sleep, diet, movement, core values, central nervous system management, there are more topics for sure. But if you just genuinely, honestly mastered those, that's like, for the average person, literally all you would need. And your life would be so much better. It would be such a huge life upgrade. And especially if you have kids and stuff of that sort, you'll be a great role model to your kids too. Because obviously if your kids see you living unsustainably and needing medical drugs and stuff of that sort, they're going to see that as a coping mechanism for them to do as well. And that's not going to really, deep down inside, that's not benefiting you. And that's not going to benefit them in any way either, obviously. So, okay. So I hope that helped clarify it and help save you guys a tremendous amount of time and money, because this stuff is super freaking cheap to do, and doesn't require any fancy equipment or anything. Like, you can sleep, you're already eating, and the average American is already spending God knows how much money on non-essential expenses, $8,000 to $16,000 a year, which almost anyone with health issues would actually deny. But if they were honest about it and sat down and look at those numbers, they would see it is actually super true. And that $8,000 to $16,000 a year is way more expensive than what at least a whole food, not the grocery store, but like real food diet would cost you. Chicken, beef, wild fish, fruits, vegetables, water, etc. Okay? Which is very inexpensive. And that's like the healthiest possible food you could have altogether, period. That's like superfood. That's healing and that's real medicine. Even if you can't buy the regenerative stuff, just eating real food, real whole food is already huge. And so much cheaper than all the supplements and junk, and will do so much more for your appearance and your health than all these like medical drugs and stuff of that sort. So, and the one issue is, unfortunately, it's like a lot of times when you tell unhealthy people like, hey, you're spending a lot of money already on that, you can just divert it, they deny it. And there has to be that denial, because that is the same belief system that led them to a lot of those problems. They have to develop these elaborate lies that they tell themselves to keep the show running. Because if they don't, they would have to face the reality of the situation, which is fairly unpleasant probably in the beginning. So, okay. So wishing you guys the best. Hopefully that saves you a lot of time and energy. And if you honestly master those variables, those are literally the 4 or 5 doctors you are ever freaking going to need, minus like a car accident or stuff of that sort. So, okay, well, take it if you want it. And if you want to continue down your normal path that hasn't been working for a while, you can do that as well. Feel free. All right, guys, take care and have a good weekend, okay?